How to Samsung Galaxy S5 Micro USB Port Daughterboard Replacement. Use this guide to replace the Micro USB Port Daughterboard. The bottom end of the phone contains the soft button and home button ribbon cables. If you insert the opening pick too far into the phone, you risk cutting these cables. Slide the very end of the opening pick across the bottom edge of the display to separate the last of the remaining adhesive. Twist the opening pick to detach the glass from the phone. If the front panel does not detach easily, it may require additional adhesive cutting. If the front panel is not easily freed, the adhesive on the soft button cable may need to be separated. These cables are thin and easily damaged, therefore be certain you are only peeling them off the display assembly and not lacerating them. Insert an opening pick under the soft button icons on the display and pry the button cables down off the inside of the front panel. Slightly lift, but do not remove, the home button end of display assembly. Do not remove the front panel entirely. It is still attached by a connector. If you are reusing the home button flex cable, be careful not to sever the cable from the home button. Adhesive can cause the cable to rip apart from the home button. While the home button will still work, the fingerprint scanner will not. Use the sharp tip of a spudger to lift the front panel assembly cable connector straight up off its socket on the motherboard. Safely remove the front panel assembly from phone. Remove the 10 3.4mm Phillips #000 screws from the display side of the midframe. Flip the phone over and remove the following screws from the battery side of the midframe. 2 4.4mm Phillips #000 screws near the USB port on the battery side of the phone. 1 4.4mm Phillips #000 screw. Gently run a plastic opening tool down along the left inner side of the interior frame to separate the 3 white plastic clips. The midframe is composed of 2 halves that encase the motherboard. Gently pull the long sides of the silver bezel out away from the phone to separate the 2 halves of the midframe. It may be helpful to gently push in from the inside of the battery compartment, but be careful not to flex the interior half of the midframe, as the motherboard is mounted to it. Continue on to the right side of the silver bezel, pulling away from the interior section of the midframe to separate the 2 halves. Use a plastic opening tool to pry any remaining corners out of the silver bezel. Carefully remove the interior midframe or motherboard assembly from the white inner midframe. Carefully wedge the tip of a spudger underneath the antenna cable connector. Delicately lift the spudger directly upwards to disconnect the antenna connector off its socket on the motherboard. Remove the single 3.0mm Phillips #000 screw securing the motherboard to the midframe. Pull, but do not remove, the camera end of the motherboard up from the midframe to allow access to the connectors on the rear. Do not attempt to fully remove the motherboard as it is still attached to the interior midframe by the micro USB port daughterboard connector. Use the flat end of a spudger to pry the daughterboard connector straight up off its socket on the motherboard. The soft button ribbon cables are attached to the micro USB port daughterboard and must be detached from the interior midframe. Flip the midframe or motherboard assembly back over. Remove the single 2.5mm Phillips #000 screw securing the micro USB port daughterboard to the midframe. Gently slide the flat end of a spudger in between the daughterboard cable and the interior midframe to begin to separate the adhesive holding it down. Rotate the midframe or motherboard assembly and reinsert the spudger between the daughterboard and interior midframe. Twist the spudger to separate the last of the adhesive between the daughterboard and interior midframe. Remove the daughterboard from the interior midframe.